better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change
Matt,
your
I'm
life.
talking to you through my quirky mask, which protects me from spores. I have to wear this because we've destroyed the planet, and now it is covered in toxic waste, and so I have to wear a mask at all times. It's important.
That's unfortunate, but I'm hope you're here to tell me the true about Cloud Atlas.
Shit. You got me with the Cloud Atlas joke.
I know, yeah.
No, nothing about
no masks, no Cloud Atlas.
No Cloud Atlas. No, today we're talking about Cloud Empress. And which is, well, we'll tell you about it in a little bit. But first, this is Dungeon Master of None, and I'm Dungeon Master Rob.
And I'm Matt. And yeah, this is a exciting mothership panic engine based role playing game of ecological science fantasy.
Ecological science fantasy. That's right. So to begin with, yeah, this is a panic system game, which is basically that's just mothership. I'm not sure that like the panic system is something that they have packaged and made available or done any work to. It's basically a hack of mothership. And there's a few of these, but not many. But Cloud Empress is one of one of the few that I've heard of, and one of the more robust. And it also takes the game in an entirely different direction, which I think is pretty interesting, which is why we're talking about it, because we talk a lot about Mothership, but one of the things that we often say about Mothership is that if you don't like science fiction horror, then it's not probably the game for you, even though it is in many ways, I think, a perfect system. It is a perfect system for mostly one type of narrative play.
Yeah, this is an attempt to make it a perfect system for ecological exploration and also horror, but also, yeah, just a weird post-apocalyptic science fantasy game. A lot of Mobius vibes. The cover looks like, I don't know, an old like reprint of the Barsoom novels with its logo and topography. It's who is this game for? Like, what types of fiction and stuff are do you need to be into to like this? I think
that's a good question. So there's one very clear antecedent, one very clear inspiration for this, and then a lot of other smaller ones. The big one is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind by Hayao Miyazaki, one of the very first films that he made. I think it's technically not a Ghibli film, but it is in every way that matters a Ghibli film. That is the clear inspiration, and I will talk about some of that because I actually rewatched Nausicaa for other reasons recently. But I think, like you said, I think Barsoom, I think Mobius, I think a lot of like science fantasy, even Book of the New Sun, Dying Earth. Like I think that if you're into far future post-apocalypse as a concept, then you will find with bugs, you will find Cloud Empress interesting. And this was actually the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about, because I think that if you just sort of glanced at this and you weren't paying attention, you could potentially come away with the wrong impression. There's been a lot of, in recent years, Matt, I have noticed, eco fantasy, solar punk, I don't know, maybe like even sort of like eco-socialist games, where, and I'm going to say this is going to sound pejorative, listeners, and I don't mean it. I'm just trying to give you where there's like a windmill and you have a garden and you ride a fancy creature.
Like that yogurt commercial.
And like, regardless of what you think about like solar punk as a concept, that is not what this is. This is not a cozy, friendly game. This is, I think, like a lot of Ghibli Miyazaki stuff, a game where nature is mad at you and you are in danger all the time and trying to negotiate a hostile environment, but the environment is active and mysterious and powerful. That is the way that is ecological.
It reminds me not so much of a movie or a novel or a Go-Gurt commercial, but of a board game I've played called Earthborn Rangers, which is maybe a little more hopeful than this game, but in that sort of, hey, there's nature, maybe you need to negotiate with it. It's got that. It does not have the class of like enslaving capitalist overlords in their Elysium flying cities that make this world suck a little bit more, but it's got that, and it does have the weird like post-future monster animals that may or may not be intelligent and are very weird, just like this game. And speaking of like the violence of nature, there's also a lot of rules about like violence in the mechanics of this game. Like you got to really think before you decide to shoot something with your weird rifle or your saber or something, because you're going to take some stress if you want to do that.
I actually really like this, and we'll talk about this when we get to the system.
I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
No.
Violence is not to be taken lightly in this game, though I think it's pretty unavoidable given the stat blocks I saw, which I kind of like, I
think that's good, and that's you're not jumping ahead because it's because I think it's a well-designed game. You can't really talk about the system without talking about the setting or the vibes, because they build on each other. But it is like, look, I rewatched Nausicaa. I also rewatched Fern Gully recently for some reason. It was showing at a local theater. And I was like, oh man, we used to care about the environment. That was nice. I liked that. I liked being a 90s kid, and it was generally considered true that we fucked up the environment and we weren't supposed to do that. And we had all these movies about it.
You've got to save water. One fire hydrant consumes 500 gallons of water.
You would not believe.
Turn off the water when your dad is shaving. Sorry, that's just I think about that New York public announcement commercial.
No,
yeah, the 90s were very hopeful that through our consumer choices we could save the environment.
There's a commercial I remember that, or like an interstitial that was on like Sesame Street, or like in between half episodes of Ninja Turtles, where like a kid's brushing his teeth and he has the faucet on and a fish calls him and he's like, hey, turn off the faucet while you're brushing your teeth, and like the water in the fish's pond is getting lower. Like, I remember this commercial from when I was 5 years old, and I've never forgotten it. Like this used to be it was a different time, right?
Yeah.
So
the good news is we're past all that. Everything's fucked up now.
You don't have to care anymore.
It's been a billion years and things are fucked.
But like the thing about Nausicaa, and the thing about a lot of these books, movies, TV shows, video games, is that they emphasize that nature might, become dangerous to us, that might fight back, right? That if we don't stop fucking around, that it could end poorly for humans. And the vibe here, and drawing heavily from Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind, is that that happened, and then thousands of years later, humans are just barely hanging on as the world has changed and become deeply hostile to us. And so
what if we lived on the planet of cicadas now, highly intelligent wizard cicadas?
Cicadas, what a great idea.
We're just kind of like hanging around. Yeah, what about wizard cicadas? The imago. Yeah, there's a bunch of weird and cool stuff in this book that if we haven't done a good job of convincing you to crack open the free rules, why not? There's imago, like highly weird cicadas with human faces in the art. You can have a pet pack squib, which is half pigeon, half rat. yeah, there's all kinds of you have weird like living armor like a Mobius character. There's a bunch of weird and cool stuff.
Yeah. I should have mentioned at the beginning, this is a free game. You can download the rule book and I think a couple of supplements for free from cloudempress.com. So you should check it out. It's really great. And it's fun to, I mean, I'm a fan of this, but it's also like you can find out for yourself because again, it is free. I do sort of just like want to make it clear this is not a problem. But having literally just rewatched the movie, it is not so much an homage to Nausicaa as I don't want to say like it's a copy. It's better than that, but it is it is like a coat of paint. Like it is basically like Nausicaa has giant bugs. Nausicaa is about pacifism. Nausicaa has weird futuristic flying machines. It's got a lot of the exact same. It's got spores. It's got toxic jungle. None of this is bad. They've taken it. They've done more with it. But I hope you like Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind because that's what you're getting. But updated and given a fresh sort of approach. The cicadas are cooler than the bugs in Nausicaa, though. I like the imago way better. I think they're like an extremely cool addition to the whole concept.
Yeah. And by we're talking about the author here, Watt, just Watt, which is a cool name.
Is a cool name, just Watt.
Yeah. So should we talk like a little more about the setting? So you've got a ruined planet filled with intelligent cicada broods that emerge, and they're wizards. They can cast magic. They produce chalk in their husks that they sell. Chalk is used to power spells. Flying over a ruined sky full of poisonous clouds are the last few kind of cloudling cities filled with tyrannical princes and lordlings and a bunch of slaves. They produce water and other luxury goods. They're people who are just getting by, living on the ground, farming away, exploring. And then the fun thing about this campaign setting, besides just post-Earth cicadas, is that there's an inciting event that you can choose to structure your campaign around, which is 100-year brood of cicadas is emerging, and also the Empress is missing. The Cloud Empress, the titular Cloud Empress. And so a lot of adventuring bands are looking for. So you could choose to center your campaign around that, or just be like, hey, there's a bunch of weird people wandering around when they wouldn't normally be.
Yeah, I think this is a really great hook. You can either make it the center of your campaign, or it can be a great background detail as you are going about whatever like less important thing you're trying to do. Suddenly there's a whole bunch of panic, a bunch of people around, there's parties trying to find the Cloud Empress. There's a war because she's missing. The cicadas.
Yeah, maybe you're just trying to build a community that survives, but soldiers are arriving. Why? Cloud Empress.
Yeah. I think this is really good. I love when a setting has like a really like good built-in tension inciting incident, right? I think that something that you can either like take or leave, but it can build around, I think is really, really fun. And I love this. I think it's really, really well done. There's also
I would just add with the like setting, it also just, this is a mothership hack, but makes it a very much more specific game than Mothership. I don't think Cloud Empress is a game for all ecological science fantasy. It is one particular ecological science fantasy game, because like even Mothership I feel like is more broad. It's any sort of space exploration with horror game. It could be about a lot of things. This is about this one bug world.
Yeah, is exactly. This is about this bug world. Yeah, Mothership can be The Expanse. It can be Alien. It can be Event Horizon. It can be a bunch of things within that sort of umbrella. But this is just the Cloud Empress setting, which is great. I think focus is often a good thing, but it is quite specifically weird in a lot of cool ways. But It is very specific. There's also, in case all of that wasn't weird enough, there's something called the slip, which is basically weird warps in the space-time continuum where sometimes things come and go, sometimes people get lost, sometimes the Imago can use this to manipulate the world around them. They understand it. It's just weird stuff happening.
Yeah, there's a nice little gazetteer. Well, we'll save it for later. Just know, later on, there's a gazetteer of weird creatures. So I think we've introduced the world of Cloud Empress enough. As Rob said, it's the panic engine. It's mothership, which means you're rolling a D100 and rolling under four stats and 3 saves. You have damage and wounds. You have also a stress pool, which if you have to make a test, you can panic and then bad things happen to you. And so that part of the system is exactly the same. Players also have skills. It's much less complicated than Mothership. You just pick some things that you roll with advantage with. And then that's pretty much it, except for I think 3 additional things. More things give you stress than in Mothership. We'll talk about them. There's magic spells, and they're really weird and some interesting mechanics involved. And combat works differently. You just kind of roll damage most of the time. So we'll talk about each of those things, but there's the setting. You also got, just like Mothership, 4 classes.
Yeah, and the 4 classes work much the same. The skills are simplified. I like this. I think it's good. I can't say if I prefer it to base Mothership, but as an either like alternate rule or an adjustment, I think it works pretty well. I think it's a lot simpler than the Mothership system, which is already pretty simple, but like just rolling with advantage on a few skills is nice. The classes are
Sellsword, Magician, Lordling, and Courier.
And they each, much like the Mothership classes, each have some advantages and disadvantages, their own distinct job condition, and what happens when they panic. Like Mothership, this you can build a character in 5-10 minutes. And
yeah, roll on a table of equipment. Lordlings get nice stuff. Soldiers are actually good at combat, which may not be that useful. Magicians have a number of starting spells, and couriers are your teamsters.
Couriers is good at everything.
Yeah,
you love to see it.
I didn't notice. Maybe I missed something, that each class has its unique panic.
Oh, it doesn't. Sorry, they don't have a unique panic condition. They have a unique job. What's it called? Job condition, which may impact panic, but is distinct from that.
Should we talk? So I think these classes do a good job of flavoring the system, and like we said, it's very, very easy to roll up a character. There's no trinkets table or anything, but you roll a D10 when you pick your class, and you get a grab bag of stuff, and you can also roll on a table to be like, hey, why am I a lordling who's going on this hex crawling adventure?
Yeah, and it probably goes without saying, but Cloud Empress comes with so many tables. I love tables. This has many tables, and like Mothership, the classes have a couple for you to roll on to flesh out your character, a couple other things that you can add, and then you're off to the races.
Like Mothership, this is a game that best works when you roll sparingly, because failure to a roll just means like, hey, you can't do that thing, and you take a stress. Failing a save, just like Mothership, you take a stress. And then panic checks are not, I think the table is not as punishing as Mothership, but it's still very, very bad. But you can also take stress for other things. For example, when you draw a weapon, your character takes a stress, right? So I really like this mechanic, and that's like, hey, I'm not taking away your agency characters to do violence or use it to solve every situation, but as it says in the rules, your characters are not heroes of a story. They don't like have narrative control. There's people trying to survive, and if you're just a regular person, no. It's been a long time since someone's like waved a gun in my face. But it's pretty stressful.
Yeah.
I was probably stressful for them too. They seemed excited. So yeah, I agree with this rule if we're going for this kind of like realism.
Well, I like this a lot. I like this a lot. And the other thing that I was thinking about having watched Nausicaa and Ferngully is that also like pacifism used to be a thing. Like you used to have stories with like actual pacifists in them who were like, let's not fight. Or my whole like ethos is around not fighting. And I feel like that has kind of also fallen off since the 90s. But the system does, I think, a really good job of not forcing you to be a pacifist, but also I think accurately or like in an interesting way demonstrating the perils of doing violence. In addition to, if you draw your weapon, you take a stress. You take a stress if you inflict a hideous wound. You take a stress if you kill something that you don't intend to eat, which I think is those would both be stressful things, and I think that's a very interesting. The panic table is not as punishing, like Matt said, but it's also smaller. You only have 10 stress. You can only accumulate 10 stress before it becomes a panic every time, unlike 20 in Mothership, which means you will start to get to dangerous levels of stress pretty quickly if you're rolling dice, and especially if you're doing combat at all. The game, I think this pushes you toward nonviolent, creative solutions to problems that don't involve rolling, which I think is cool.
I also really approve of specifically for this game, the changes on the flip side of the coin. It says in the rules for combat, when you attack something with a weapon, roll damage and then inflict that damage. Your game master can call for a check, but only if hitting that thing would be unusually difficult. Like the creature or person is outside of the weapon's normal range, or you're trying to avoid hitting something right next to it or something like that. The default state is for combat, you just roll damage, which means that combats are going to be a lot faster, a lot more deadly, and give everyone a lot more stress, very frequently. But it also means the players can like say, hey, this will solve the problem. That violence is always an option here.
Yeah. Well, and it works the way that it does in Mothership, I think, because, it's modeling, you're firing blindly in the dark against an alien or something like that. But, in
Mothership, it's hard to hit the xenomorph,
Yes.
It's fast.
But in Cloud Empress, I think it makes sense that, if you're to the point where you're going to stab something or shoot it, you will do it. The problem is that it will cause serious problems to your level of stress, even if it solves the problem. I really do like this change. I think it is this is a great example of how to subtly adjust the rules that encourage a certain type of play. I think this is a really well designed hack, I guess we're calling it, of the panic engine.
Yeah.
I think it's neat.
There's one other thing that I think everyone should read this book for, especially if you're like me. And I'm sorry if this was in some other book that I read that I'm sure was great, or in some game that I inflicted on my poor players, which is like, oh, magic should have a cost. But both you and I agree that like just draining someone's like hit points or something just kind of turns it into
boring,
a mechanized game. I once had a game where it's like when you cast a spell, this, you forget the face of your father or something like that. That memory disappears, or you can no longer taste citrus. And like there's some cost to the caster. But of course, those like abstract things, like unless your game is about those things, it doesn't really matter to the player. And then the hit
Yeah.
points just make it a resource management punishing system. In this game, when you cast a spell, there's a cost that is, I think, very applicable to the type of game. For example, when you cast Dream Spy, the caster has disadvantage on one of the types of saves, reality saves, for a month. When you cast Animal Tongue, for the next 3 days, nearby animals bark, howl, meow, and hiss at the caster, which, if you're trying to move silently through this, wilderness, is maybe a problem, So they're like concrete, like real world costs to the spells. I think that's very interesting.
I think it's really interesting too. I'm like you, Matt. I like the idea of spells having interesting costs. Burning Wheel does this in an interesting way. Maybe I've told this story on the pod before, but like in my Burning Wheel game, we had a miscast that ended up with one of our players having a tin cup that never cooled down. It was always hot. It just was constantly like just a scalding hot tin cup because of
the hot cup.
The hot cup. Anyway, but it's hard to. It's one. Burning Wheel is a stupid game with like a billion charts and tables, and that took 12 rolls to get to. But I really like the way that this does it. Yeah, there's a cost, like it costs stress, period, to cast a spell. It costs chalk, which you have to have. There's a risk of a miscast, in which case something interesting happens, and then on top of all that, there's an after effect. The things that Matt mentioned, which can be, animals howl at you, but it also might be you can't walk through a door for 3 days. Like they're significant, but not like crippling. And I think it makes Magic feel, to me, powerful, interesting, and a real risk reward scenario. You're really like thinking about, is it a good idea? Is it worth it? Is it important to cast this spell?
Yeah, I really like this. If you've ever wanted to have in your campaign some sort of cost for Magic, please ignore hit points. Please ignore random wacky miscast tables. Take a look at the After Effects table, and I think you'll be pretty happy with these this cost of Magic, in addition to the resource cost, which we all need chalk. You gotta have chalk. What is chalk? I think the people in the world don't really know, but it seems to be like the accreted, like tech / pollutant radioactive remains of past torturer civilizations of humans that is also in the middle of all the cicada husks. It's weird.
Some kind of detritus from what's left behind. I love this. Here's the thing. I'm such a sucker for this like science fantasy stuff. I love science fantasy. I love the idea of the dungeon that you're going into is a spaceship or like an old office building or whatever, and the loot that you're acquiring is, a tech that nobody understands. That just it's not like structurally different from a dungeon crawl, but it delights me to no end. And chalk is perfect for this. It's just some kind of leftover accreted something from the people that came before, and you use it to cast spells. The spells I think are really interesting. This I think is probably mechanically the most that's been added to the mothership system. There, can't cast spells in mothership, but
no, certainly not.
I think it is really well implemented, and I think it's like true to the sort of mothership panic system ethos, and that it's dangerous, hard to use, and not necessarily beneficial. I think these are really well written, really well implemented spells. I think you could probably borrow something like this for Mothership or for other similar games. I think these are really neat, especially like Matt said, the After Effects is just really great job of making the Magic feel like it has a serious cost without making it prohibitive or making it just another like resource management game.
Yeah. There are also crests, which are essentially magic items. They're things that have more powerful effects. They also cost chalk, but they don't. You have to make a check to use them, and they can do very sometimes very very powerful things. So if you want like a loot table of weird magical stuff, techno magical stuff, then you also have it. There is, while we're on the like rules section, there's one set of rules that I think is a little bit of a misstep for a hex crawl game. And that is the hex crawling rules.
I agree, but tell me your problems. Yeah, but I agree.
I mean, so they're it's not that different than a lot of hex crawl rules. Like, hey, you need some resources to travel from hex to hex, and they can take some group actions. Like, these are all fine. When you run out of provisions, you take 2 stress and 2 damage. I think it's typically, your players are going to be able to like hunt and forage and have resources and not take damage, or they're setting out well equipped and then they won't take damage. It's just maybe I'm spoiled, Rob, coming from in the middle of a Mythic Bastion land campaign where the hex crawling like mini game of resource management also has like moves your clock of your various plots forward and has resources the players don't have to like worry about, but they're still like managing as it's slowly getting harder to travel. I don't know what the solution here is, but I found these hex crawl rules not conducive to the type of play that I think this game wants me to play.
Yeah, I do find this kind of resource management to be pretty boring at this point, and this isn't necessarily the fault of Cloud Empress. It's hard to do in a way that I think is interesting. I don't think there's a whole lot that's fun about managing your rations and checking to make sure that everybody's hunted and taking time to set up your camp. I don't know, that I do think hex crawls are interesting. I like to hand wave a lot of that stuff because I think if your players are thinking about it, it's a non-issue, and if they're not, then you're like, aha, you didn't bring rations, take some stress, and it's like, well,
right.
I don't know. It's not very fun to me.
Yeah, it just doesn't feed into the gameplay loop in the same way that I was hoping to see once I got to the hex crawl rules. So I think that's my main criticism there.
They're easy to ignore, though, and you can use any of the other hex crawl rules that we have talked about or make up your own. It's fine.
Speaking of like all the things that do give you stress, they've also increased the list of things that get rid of your stress. So right. There's, if you can eat some good food or do some other nice things, build some community, including have good sex, you can reduce your stress.
Has to be good sex, which is important.
Yeah.
No, it's nice whenever you rest, and this is a thing about Mothership, is that it is actually pretty hard to reduce your stress. In Cloud Empress, you can pretty easily reduce up to 4 stress every time you rest if you are planning ahead and making good choices and not being pursued by your enemies, which might not take a dent out of your 10 stress, but it means that you probably can stay closer to the manageable levels of stress easier if you are going slow and resting and not getting into fights with people very often and not rolling the dice too frequently, which I think is a good habits to encourage in your players.
Yeah. And then well, we're getting close to the end of the rules. Are there any other like general things you want? 'Cause like this is not a long game. The rules are like 60 pages. The rules and setting information.
No, we talked about the Imago. I think they're really interesting. Again, they are cicadas. They come out every 100 years, or sorry, they come out
every 7.
Summer,
but
every
then
7.
There's a century brood.
There's a century brood. I think they're really interesting. There's some charts on like how to run them, how they behave. It's not clear sort of like what their overall goal is. They're not inherently hostile to humans, but they might be if you are in the wrong place at the wrong time. They come in a bunch of different sizes. They can cause warps in space-time. I think this is in the same way that the inciting incident is a really good background to whatever adventure that you want to have. The Imago are a really good, not antagonist, but like foil or obstacle or just something to sort of like throw in to alarm, frighten, confuse, complicate your player's adventure. I think they are super neat. I also, having grown up with cicadas, I'm like, oh hey, this is both comforting and horrifying somehow. The idea of a gigantic, sentient, magical cicada. It's yeah.
Rob, this made me feel very bad for like when I was 12, tying a cicada to some fishing line and feeding it to a Mississippi kite that was circling above as it, flew above my head, stuck to the fishing line.
I mean,
so
that would.
I feel like these Imagos are here to punish me.
They are here to punish you. That is also something that would definitely have given you stress, but also it's probably the most obvious thing that a young lad in Oklahoma and Texas might do.
Yes. Anyway, I'm gonna join the brood monks and contemplate.
That's right. And do penance. You're gonna lay out
cicadas.
Corpses for the cicadas to eat because that's what they like.
If we haven't mentioned this, the cicadas also know magic, and they know more magic than humans. What they want or can do is either not really in the free rules, only hinted at with the intention that that's sort of your job as the GM to come up with some inscrutable thing that that they do other than eat bones and do magic and care for their young.
Which is, again, I think a really good tool in your toolbox as a GM. You can decide how much of this you care about, whether or not there's an answer. I think it's a useful tool. There's two more things I want to talk about before we get to the starting adventure and any other thoughts, and that is the body hoppers first, and then curses. So there's, I guess there's not. It's not races specifically, but in addition to humans, you can be a body hopper, which is basically an ancient magician that does what it sounds like. It moves from body to body. They might be as old as the torturers themselves, and it comes with some advantages and some disadvantages, but it's an option that's available to you. Opens up some sort of like interesting antagonists and also PC options. And then the curses are kind of interesting. Matt, what did you think about the curses?
Yeah. I think if you want a weird science fantasy game, these are some weird science fantasy stuff to throw at your players.
Yeah. Basically, if you want, the first time you die, instead of just dying, something weird happens. Instead of dying, you come back and
with a frog head. I was like, there's in the art, there's someone with a frog head. I'm like,
that's right.
Where does that come from? That hasn't been explained yet. And I finally got to this table. I'm like, oh, this person's cursed.
Cursed. Yeah. Maybe you come back and you got horns or a frog head, or you're a wanderling, which is like a half ghost, or you grow young, you grow old. It's just like weird. Yeah, it's weird stuff. It's weird science fantasy stuff. I like this. I don't know. There's other ways to acquire curses. I think this is I think this is cool. It's just like a neat little like detail to. So if you're reading the book and you're like, I was like Matt, I was like, why has that guy got a frog head? I didn't see a frog head race in the rules, but yeah, it's a curse. Yeah, so I think that's most of the setting stuff. There's a few other things.
We're told in poem that the Cloud Empress is maybe some sort of like, I don't know, essentially lady slave pope of the people who live in the flying cities. She answers their prayers, but is also like kept in a prison, and she's escaped. So it's vague enough. I think you can do whatever
And
you
I-
want with this mystical, Cloud Empress. You have to give her a name probably when you meet her or something.
I think one of the other books, which is also free, does have details about the Cloud Empress, but I
Okay,
kind of like
good.
that it's not in the base book. Yeah, she's like she's like the kid in the closet in The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, but except that they treat her nicely and she grants wishes, but also maybe she's a prisoner and possibly suffering in one way or another. And you don't know. And you gotta find her maybe and figure out what her deal is. Okay. Shall we talk about the starting adventure? Matt and I talk often about how a sign of a good book, a good rule book, is that it comes with a starting adventure, and Cloud Empress, it does. Again, this is a short book, but it made sure to include an adventure. The
Last voyage of the Bean Barge. Which I think is going to take Rob and I to the Rancho Gordo headquarters. We're gonna have some beans.
I wish there was a bean barge to the Rancho Gordo headquarters. Oh man.
The bean barge comes only once a year, bringing beans to good boys and girls. No, the bean barge is the name of a shitty little airship that's going to take your characters from one of the cloud cities down to one of the miserable little towns on the surface. And lots of people are going down because, hey, people are looking for the Cloud Empress. People are worried about the 100-year cicada brood. What's going to happen? There's some wacky NPCs on board. That's the adventure. You go downstairs.
Leader of this city matter has been mismanaging the Cloud City, and so a bunch of people are ready to go, and so there's a bunch of folks on the bean barge. So this is this is written in a very interesting way. Matt, I'm wondering, did this work for you or not? What did you think?
Overall, no, in that I sort of want a little more from a starting adventure. Like, I can see how this could easily take 2 sessions of play if players are like really into talking to these NPCs and learning about the world. I could also see how it could take less than a session of play and you're like, ooh, what do we do next? Maybe that's sort of the idea, is that this is not so much a starting adventure, but just like a chance for after you've rolled up your party to see what they want to do. However, there's not like a ton of like hooks in the adventure. It's really just, here are some NPCs on a ship. The ship will go from a town in the clouds to a town on the surface, and some like amagos will land on it while it's going down.
The lordling is Amana the Chaste, which is
Amana
a
the
good,
Chaste.
a good
he's,
name.
He's a good lordling.
For lordling. Yeah, there's not really. I mean, I want to give this credit because I like this book a lot, but there's not really an adventure here. There's a setting, there's some NPCs, there's some events. You could assemble all of these things into an adventure, but by itself, there's not actually anything here. I can see how if you took the time to read this and did some prep, how you could throw together a pretty fun starting adventure here. But this, more than many that I have read, you really will have to do some work, because you can't just go in with these tables and just let your players bounce around. There's not enough structure. I would have liked a little bit more, because right now trying to figure out how to like put all these different people and all these different events together in a way that is coherent and interesting is not coming to me like all that easily.
Here's my like bigger, I think harsher critique is, you're given 5 NPCs on the ship. A captain who's hooked up to some weird tubes and is sick, because everyone's sick. This is a toxic
everyone's got spores in their lungs.
There's a first mate who is nice. There is a noble passenger who has just murdered her sister.
I like Small Onion. Small Onion is the first mate.
Yeah, small onion. And there's Sippa, a lordling who has just murdered her sister after losing a duel and is essentially just ready to die unless the players intervene. They can find her sister's body. There is a also about to die brood nun, monk person. And then there is a obviously disguised tough heavy disguised as a fake monk, which is a cute like all these
It's funny.
NPCs
It's
are
funny.
like cute. And actually, if you gave me 4 of these 5 NPCs, I think this would be a perfect starting party to like start exploring the wastes. But as on their own, I'm not exactly sure how these are supposed to like spin you off into exciting things. There's a
Yeah.
little bit with the lordling, like, hey, do you want to go deal with the unresolved duels that she ran away from and murdering her sister? But then you're like going back to a cloud city and like involving yourself in the politics of these decadent ruling nobles, and I'm not sure this game is equipped to deal with that. Like, there's no information about that. You could take her as you could take any of these people as hirelings. That's fine. And then the nun has a place she wants to go to die. That's a place you could go with her, but like that's like one hook, unless I'm missing something. So I just
No, you're
it's-
not. Yeah.
again, this would be fine if you want to have your first encounter, but you still need to plan, I would think, your first session of play. You and I have not run this short encounter adventure, but we have run a lot of Mothership.
We have.
And based on the speed of Mothership, this is not enough stuff for your first session, in my opinion. At least for me.
I think so too. I guess I think maybe the purpose of this is to introduce the setting and the vibe through these NPCs, but I agree with you. There's not really any hooks. It's not clear like what to do next or how any of these people are all that interesting or important from here on out. It's not like a disaster. There's stuff to work with here, and the thing is, there's a lot of other adventures that have already been written for this system. But as a starting adventure, this feels incomplete in a sort of like a different way.
I have to agree. I think you could either make your characters the crew of this ship and passengers, and the ship is going to not make it back up because it's a bucket of bolts and it's going to crash. But the best way for me to like introduce characters to this weird world, which has a lot of assumptions, a lot more assumptions. That's the trick here with this game compared to Mothership, right? You don't have to tell anyone about Mothership because everyone's seen one movie.
Right.
And they're just like, hey, you're on a ship. It's the future in space and it's scary.
You don't even have to have seen Alien to understand what Mothership is about. You just absorbed it through the atmosphere.
Yeah. In this one, you have to explain, hey, the world is fucked up. There are these cities. So like there's an NPC to explain like every part. And then there's an encounter that will happen where a Mago lands because a Mago are important. And so your players will learn about that. And to me, that is the least interesting thing or way to introduce how the world works. I get that there's this tension, like the characters should know. Every character in Cloud Empress should know what an Imago is, even if they've never seen one up close. But like, so I get that, but like, I think it's just better to just let your players bumble around and be like, well, I guess I should know that. What do I know about that? And just tell them and then let them play. It seems like a holding pin before you can let your players play the game. And so it's kind of a big miss for me.
And this is the problem with a game like this, which is not actually the game's problem. One of the things that makes Mothership so great, or Blades in the Dark, or even Dungeons and Dragons is that everybody understands the type of story that is being told and the setting. Roughly, Blades of Dark's a bad example because the setting is insane, but you understand you're doing a heist, right? In Cloud Empress, you are in a really weird world in telling a kind of like a different story, which I think is cool and worth doing, but it means you can't just like sit your players down and be like, you're on a derelict spacecraft and something is hunting you. Because everybody immediately gets how to play and exist in that world. And this requires a little bit more upfront work from you and your players.
I think it is also a problem with the rules system that could maybe be fixed just with a better starting adventure. But I've run like the very first session. One was a one shot. One was a bit longer, of Blades in the Dark twice. And all I had to do with the players, besides giving them their, character sheets, and of course, character creation takes a little bit longer, so there's more time to like unpack things. Cloud Empress is really fast, but I just said, hey, you're in a dystopian Victorian city. There's ghosts everywhere, and the economy is built on hunting demon whales for their blood, and you need to like get some money. Right? In this game, what do you need to do? It's up to the players and it's up to you as the GM, and that's fine. That's the way that like 75% of role-playing games work. So it's not a criticism, but because it's so open-ended and because the world is so specific, you've got to have like a very concise way of introducing it to the players. And I think this starting adventure is patching that sort of hole over. And I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could address this. You could make player characters like emerging from a vault or from stasis, but that's way less interesting. It's way more cool that the player characters are grounded in the world and like have these connections. My suggestion is to just get straight to doing an interesting thing. Like, hey, travel somewhere to sell a thing or get a thing. Go somewhere. That's what this game seems to be about. So I would just, as opposed to ride in a bus.
You're caravanning somewhere like Ultraviolet Grasslands, right? You're going from one township or city to another. All that being said, aside from the starting adventure, I thought this was a great book, and there's lots of other adventures, some of which are free. Check them out. Just don't run the starting adventure. It's not worth your time, in my opinion.
Or if you do, just keep it to the first like 15 minutes of play. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like if you sat down with just the starting adventure and your players decided to not talk to any of the NPCs in depth, then you're fucked. But if you've already prepped something beyond that, and then your players spend an hour talking to these people or 10 minutes, you're fine either way. And I think the good news that Rob has mentioned is we just looked at the same thing that hopefully you are looking at right now, the free starting rules. There's a ton of other like adventure books and supplements for this, both created by Watt, the creator, and community members. So there's a seems to be a fairly, for an indie game, robust set of support and people who are interested in creating shit for Cloud Empress.
Yeah. Anything else we want to say about the setting, the rule book before we close out?
No, other than this is, I think an indie game that punches above its weight. The design and the art are absolutely lovely at every turn. So reading through the book, you get a sense of exactly what is going on here, way better than our podcast can really do. And for me, it solidifies the robustness of that old school D100, but then simplified way down for Mothership with just a couple of interesting things tacked on, like the way wounds and panic and stress and advantage work. And I think the panic engine of Mothership can be applied to a lot of games. So if you're throwing something, your own weird ecological science fantasy, post-apocalyptic bug negotiation game together or something different, consider using a hack of the Mothership system.
Yeah. I think this is really cool. I think like Matt, I think one of the things that's interesting about it is that it's showing what you can do with the Panic engine, with just this style of play. I like that it takes what we love about Mothership and I think successfully transfers it to an entirely different setting and style of play. Like we said, it's free. And if you have been listening to us gab about Mothership for a year or two and are just like, I don't like horror, check this out. See if it's interesting to you. I think it's really cool.
What if you liked ecological horror instead?
Yeah. What if you like a different type of horror? What if you just don't like space? Which is fine.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Space is scary. I get it. I understand.
What if the monsters, instead of being from space, it came up from under the ground where they've been nesting for 7 years?
I would rather be killed by an alien. I would rather be killed by a xenomorph than a cicada coming up from the ground. That definitely to me feels more horrible, but also that, I think that has to do with my own particular.
Would you feel better if the giant cicada had a human face etched on its armored hide? Would that make it better or worse?
No, I think it would make it much worse. It would make it much worse.
Maybe that's intentional. Thanks, Watt.
Yeah, thanks, Watt. Thank you for that image, Watt. Thank you for all the things that are gonna make me have weird dreams tonight.
Yeah, and then I guess my final closing thought is, despite the fact that everyone's poisoned all the time, and there's evil, decadent, capitalist overlords, the game does not feel as grim as Mothership even, or as it still feels a little hopeful in that, hey, people are still just surviving, and that's pretty nice.
Yeah, I got that too, and I don't know exactly why that is, but even though a lot of bad things happen and a lot of bad things can happen to you, it doesn't feel quite so grim, dark of the distant future. It feels like, yeah, you're with your there. You can still make friends. You can still have traveling companions. You can still try to make a community in a better world, even though it's a poisonous, terrifying world full of dangerous giant bugs. Yeah, it's
yeah. Maybe it reminds me that, I don't know if anyone's ever thought of this before, Rob, but I was just thinking science fiction could be like a mirror to our own time. Maybe I'm kind of just seeing, it's maybe me projecting a lot of parallels here.
You're blowing my mind here,
this
Matt.
world and ours. Someone should write something about this.
Anyone,
let me know if anyone's ever written anything about science fiction being a mirror.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Check out Cloud Empress.
Check it out. It's cool.
It's cool. I mean, really, it's also not that it respects your time. It's not super long. Check out Cloud Empress. We'll put a link in the show notes. If you have other things you want us to take a look at, you can always write us at dmofnone@gmail.com. You can join us on Discord or check out one of our many social channels. Also links in the show notes. If you want to support the show, head on over to patreon.com/Dungeon Master of None. And as always, thanks for listening, everybody.
See you in 100 years.
See you in another 100 years, where we'll keep rolling them dice.